We're live on YouTube. This is the Complete Man podcast, episode number 1. And we're live in 3, 2. All right, welcome to the very first episode of the Complete Man podcast with your host. Maybe it's too much to assume, Purdeep. Are you a complete man?
I do my best, man. I better be on top of that, right? Because I wrote the friggin' book. So
Yeah, that's a big title to claim. Purdeep Sangha, the Complete Man podcast. And thank you, first of all, for joining us today. And Purdeep, before we jump into today's topic, explain, if you would, the shift from the male entrepreneur to the complete man.
yeah. So a long story short, I think it was an evolution of basically what we represent. And it's really around the complete man. We started with a male entrepreneur, but almost 3.5, 4 years ago, maybe? I
Mm-hmm.
can't remember, but it's been a while, right, Nathan?
Yeah.
And that was really where we started because we were talking about the strength for men, right? And entrepreneurship. And that's where the male entrepreneur came about. And then the concept really evolved into the complete man. And there's another, you can say, motivation as well when it came to, uh, you can say, trademarking the male entrepreneur, which we did. We ran into some interesting challenges from a bigger company that has entrepreneur in their title and apparently has the word entrepreneur trademarked. That's just kind of on a side note. But long story short, we're talking about the complete man because this is really the principle that we try to follow, that we coach, that we train men on, which is really about how do you live your fullest life? How do you live at your highest potential and perform and achieve and be fulfilled in all aspects of your life? That is really what the complete man is about. And when we were creating the title of the book, because this podcast is a continuation of the male entrepreneur, but we decided to change it to the complete man because it's a representation of the book and our overall brand. We took a look at what we could potentially call the book, and we started with the invincible man. But in all reality, I didn't think that was possible because none of us are invincible. But but being the complete man is possible. And the concept around this isn't that you have everything that you want all the time, 100% of the time, whether that's the wealth, the marriage, having a perfect family, but it's more about being internally complete. How you feel about yourself, how are you evolving as a man? Because once you get to the point where you feel complete inside, that's when you have true fulfillment. That's when you are becoming what we talk about, mindful alpha male, where you are the creator of your life and creating your circumstances rather than being a victim to them. That's ultimately what this podcast is about.
So I have a bunch of mixed emotions about this. First of all, I'm not a big fan of major shifts and starting over from scratch and the amount of momentum killing that happens when that occurs. Also, though, I'm a big fan of your book and of all of the iterations of this podcast. The Complete Man is the one that feels the most authentic to you and kind of your philosophy on life. And just to give people a teaser of kind of what that philosophy is and how it's going to play into this podcast. And I know I'm diverting from the subject that you wanted to cover today, but I also know that this is very important because this version of the podcast, I think, it's the one that resonates the most with who you actually are. So just a real quick tease before we jump into it. What is it that the message, the theme, the philosophy of this podcast is going to embody?
Yeah, the philosophy is that you can be fulfilled in all aspects of your life, that you can have what you want. You can have that amazing relationship. You can have the career. You can have the fancy house and all that stuff. But guess what? At the end of the day, whether you have it or not, it's not going to matter because you're going to feel so good about yourself that life is going to be engaging. You're going to be fully alive. You're going to have a different sense of what life is really about. Nathan, I got a number of emails, especially over the last couple of weeks. And I think that's one of the reasons why it prompted this shift is because a lot of the guys that were out there We're actually sending messages about our episodes when it came to meta consciousness, about spirituality, because
Mm.
it touched them at the deepest level. And I think that ultimately is what it's really about, is how do you be or live at your highest potential? And we're talking about your mind, your body, your soul, your spirit. That's ultimately what we talk about here at the Complete Man.
Okay. So one of the things that I really like about what I've learned from you and a couple of the other guys that have been mentors to me as I've been going through my own entrepreneurial journey is the idea that it's not about there. It's not about getting to there. It's about enjoying the journey as you get there, or maybe you never even get there, but you're there right now. There is no there out there. It's right now. And um, a lot of lessons about that in the book that I enjoy and hope that we'll be covering. But enough of that. I just wanted to give the listeners a little bit of a insight on what the show's going to be about. But today you wanted to talk about leaning in. Is that what the topic for today is?
Yeah, that is the topic today. And it's actually very relevant to your last comment, because I'm just going to add on to that. It's it's about here, it's about now, but it's also about who. Who are you as a man? Who are you as a father? Who are you as a husband? That's what really matters. And when you feel good about who you are, right? That's when life gets really, really fun. That's when you take a look at your challenges and you say, let me see who I can become as a result of this. And life no longer becomes a struggle or suffering. It becomes a challenge. And that's what when we talk about the Complete Man, we talk about ultimate victory as well. And that's really what it's about. And so this ties into today's episode, which is really about leaning in. And I want to share a pattern that I've observed in men. And for those of you who aren't aware, we do training, we do coaching, and we do advising and consulting for both businesses and business leaders. So typically CEOs, entrepreneurs, executives. That's kind of the target group that we attract the most. And so we do on two fronts. And we're very unique from this perspective. We help with business growth. So we help you with your business aspects, your business strategy, your growth, all that kind of stuff. But we also help you on the personal side, your personal performance. That's when it comes to how do you make better decisions? How do you have better emotions? How do you have more drive, more energy? And we use real neuroscience and philosophy. You can say spirituality as well, for those of you who believe in that, energy. We encompass it all in one, because for you to be successful in life, yeah, business strategies may work, but it's you that's going to execute on those strategies. So if you're not at the level you need to be at, then your business is not going to be at the level that it needs to be at or you want it to be at. And here's a pattern that I've seen. One of the areas that we work on, there's typically two camps of men. There's a camp of men that are doing extremely well and they want to do even better, right? So they're killing it in some way, shape, or form. Not that their life is perfect, but they just want to advance the results or accelerate the results. The other camp, and both camps are awesome. There's nothing wrong if you're in either camp. The other camp is guys that are struggling in some way, shape, or form. So they're struggling in their business, or they're not making enough money, or they're making money, but they want to make a lot more money, but they're not feeling good about where they are right now, or they're having problems or challenges. Maybe they're having a health challenge, and their health challenges are as a result of their lifestyle and their mindset, not necessarily what they're eating or stuff like that, or the fitness, but more of their mindset. What I've observed is we get a lot of those guys reaching out to us. And what ends up happening is that when they're down and out, they'll reach out and we'll have calls, because I have introductory calls all the time. And I do free calls for men because I believe in giving back. I believe in helping people. And a lot of these guys will reach out because they're down and out, and we put a plan in place together. And we may not fully engage in a client relationship, whatever that may look like. And that's not really our intention in the first call anyways, but they're fully gung ho, they're ready to go. And then what ends up happening is that maybe between the time that we have the conversation and we start, which can be 4 weeks sometimes, or even 6 weeks, depending on our capacity, their life turns around and actually gets a little bit better. And when things get a little bit better, then they pull away and they say, hey, Purdeep, we might not need your services in terms of what your organization does. And then we're like, fine. And there's no harm to that. And there's no ill feelings. We want you to be doing awesome. That's the whole point. But what ends up happening is it's just, I'm going to say, a little blips on the screen. Like, when you're reading like an ECG or something and you see that little blip, it goes up. Well, their life has gone up and then it comes back down again, right? Because maybe it was luck. Maybe they did something that turned their luck around, but then they can't sustain it. And then they come back again and they reach out to us again and say, Purdeep, we really need to work together. And then I'll be like, okay, well, you know what? I don't have capacity at this time. It'll be another 6 weeks or so before we can engage. And then their life will get better again. And then they'll say, Pradeep, we don't really need you. And then it goes back down again. And this is a common pattern in men that I observe, because at times of challenges, they may reach out, but then they think they have it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to understand that, are you actually doing the things you need to do to sustain it? And so that's why I talk about leaning in. When times are tough, you got to lean in. And if you're looking for help, continue to look for help, right? Don't just say, oh, well, I don't need help anymore because things are getting better. There's a reason why you were in that spot in the first place. And you're more likely to be in that same spot or even worse unless you address the root causes. And that's what leaning in is really about: getting to the root of your challenges, getting to the root of your mindset, your emotional patterns, wherever you may be. Because when you go on the basis of circumstances, which a lot of guys do, right? Our circumstances go up and down. Sometimes we have great business cycles, and that's based on circumstance. Sometimes things get better, but we don't actually get to the root cause. It's like when people say, my sales are really slow right now. We say, well, what did you do 30 days before or 90 days before? Because that will dictate where your sales are now. And if you're not getting to those root causes, then you can continue to go up and down. So that is our core topic for today, Nathan.
So two things come to mind for me. Number one, in my business, I did a lot of studying. I did a lot of practicing. I did a lot of implementing and struggle. And it wasn't until I started addressing some of the subconscious programs that I had about success, about the fears that I had, and confronting a lot of really scary stuff of inner work that I didn't want to confront. But once I did, that's when things really started taking off for me. But it was scary to lean into. When you say lean in, that's exactly how I felt. I felt like, okay, I'm kind of breaking the surface here, but if I really want to go, I'm going to have to lean into this. But then there's the fear that I'm going to fall flat on my face from leaning in. And I wonder how many guys that you're talking about in this situation where they kind of have that bleep or the blip on the screen and then it dives back down again. I wonder how many of them start to lean in and then something scares them, terrifies them, maybe makes them confront things that they're not ready to confront. And that's what makes them pull back.
Yeah. And I've also experienced this a number of times. When I speak to men, and surprisingly enough, even in the first conversations, I think this is what differentiates what we do compared to other, you can say, business advisors or life advisors, whatever it is. A lot of guys, they open up and they confide in me and they tell me a lot in the first conversation, or even the subsequent conversations, to the point where they will tell me things that no one else knows, things like abuse or challenges and stuff that they've experienced in life, like things that they break down and cry about. What ends up happening a lot of the times is a lot, and we do this as men more than women do, we bury a lot of stuff, right? If our dad beat the crap out of us when we were younger, we're taught to be, okay, they made it stronger, which it will if we deal with the root of that. If we don't deal with it, we're just pretending. So when guys open up and they share this information, which I encourage you to do, because there's a stat out there, 43% of guys want to open up, but they can't necessarily open up because they don't know where their safe place is to open up. And it doesn't make you any less manly. But what ends up happening, because I'm working with sometimes very high-powered CEOs, right? Influential people around the world, that when they open up, well, guess what? It's almost like buyer's remorse after. Because now, after they've gotten off a call with me, and maybe even a few days later, like, I can't believe I just told Purdeep what I told him. I can't believe this. I've never said this. I've never cried in front of anybody. I've never shared these feelings. I am so embarrassed because I don't want any other person to know this. I don't want any other person to see me this vulnerable. including myself.
Mhm.
So coming back to me sometimes makes them feel more vulnerable about themselves. And that's another reason why a lot of guys don't come back. And I'm not trying to scare anybody away. That's not the point of this conversation. But this is the reality,
Mhm.
right? If you share something, yes, it is scary. And yes, you may regret it after, but you got to continue to lean in, because that's on that other side, which we call the unknown, is where progress really happens. I had this conversation with my wife last week, Nathan. She's going through her own coaching, right? Her and I, she's asked me a number of times before in the past number of years ago to help her, to coach her, to guide her. And it just doesn't work as a spouse, because it's just there's too many overlaps, and it doesn't make sense. So I asked her, I said, you know what? You should get someone else, someone that's really good, that focuses on women. You need to do that for yourself. And she was going through something last week, and I'm not going to share it because it's a little bit too personal, but she was afraid as heck to actually do it. Afraid. And I said, I'm here for you. I'm here for you. Whatever you need to lean in, because that unknown is what you are fearful of.
Mhm.
If you break through that unknown, you will find something that you've never experienced before. You will have a whole new level of, whether it's appreciation or confidence, whatever it might be. And because I was there, she felt comfortable being able to do that. She did it. And I have not seen my wife like this since we first got married. It was such a phenomenal change for her to break through that challenge, that mental, emotional block that she had, and the what she had to do to get through it. It was amazing for me to see. And I think that happens for men as well. When that happens, man, your life changes.
So I have this visualization of a kid learning how to swim, and they're kicking their legs, and they know they can swim, but they're still holding on to either the rope, or they're still holding on to the side of the pool. And there's this amazing swimming pool out there where they can just explore and embrace the wonder of their full potential as a new found ability to swim, but they won't let go of that. And I've dealt with this, and I still sometimes in other areas of my life do deal with this, but leaning in is like letting go of that, of the side of the swimming pool. And that's a pretty terrifying thing for people.
Mhm. Oh, it is terrifying. And I think your example is so brilliant, Nathan, because that takes me back to my kids' swimming lessons and seeing how my son and my daughter were a little bit different, but not only them in terms of their personalities, but here is the two biggest things that I saw that made a difference in that exact same example that you're talking about. A, who their instructor was.
Mm.
If they were comfortable with their instructor, if their instructor could read them, could understand them, could relate to them, be compassionate, but also be skilled enough to know what to do from a technical perspective, my kids had greater confidence. Second, who else is in that group? Because they would do swimming lessons in a group. If they had a bunch of kids that were not engaging, or maybe even mean, or maybe even too advanced where they were intimidated, that made them stick to that side of the wall. But if they were in the right group, it was a lot easier for them to do that. So this relates to us as adults as well, because we're just grown up children. That's all
Mhm.
we are. And so this goes to the point, is if you have the right group surrounding you, you can lean in even further, right? That could be your friends, that could be coworkers, whoever it is. It could be a mastermind like you do, Nathan, and like we do every once in a while. Um, and then having the right mentors around. That is so important. If you don't have a mentor, we've talked about this in the past, find a mentor, find several mentors. But when you find the right person, you're going to be able to open up to a different level and lean in even further as well. And a right mentor will push you to lean in. Right? They'll never step on your fingers as you're keeping onto the edge, but they're going to give you a little bit of a nudge. That's what mentors are meant to do.
Yeah, the mentor, the coach that you pick, the group coaching that you pick, the mastermind that you pick, all of it is so vital, because that environment, that encouragement, that ability to see other people doing what you want to do. If you're in a group, if you're in a swim class full of people who all refuse to let go of the edge of the swimming pool, chances are you're not going to let go of the edge. But if you're in a group of people out there doing swan dives and doing flips under the water and doing all kinds, then you're like, okay, I can do this as well, and I can let go and I can lean in. Okay, so we went kind of all over the place with this episode today. If there's one kind of overall theme, overall message that you want to leave the listeners with as we sign out on this episode, what would that be?
If you're uncomfortable, you're going in the right direction. That is ultimately it.
Mm.
If it's making you be like, "Ah," and making you even second guess yourself, or making you fearful, or making you think, I've never done this before, or what's going to happen, all that kind of stuff tells you that you're going in the right direction.
Yeah, all the magic in life is right outside the comfort zone.
Yep.
All right, so if people enjoyed this episode and they want to subscribe, where's the best place to go to check out more episodes and make sure that they don't miss future episodes?
Well, for now, you can go to YouTube for Men to check us out on YouTube. And we still have, you can still go to mailpodcast.com, but we will be changing that fairly soon as well.
All right, man. Until next time, we will catch you later.
Till next time.